Hello, and welcome to this special edition of Office Hours. Believe it or not, we've had 900 daily shows since March 25th, 2000. Of course, we're going to muse about that tomorrow on our Sunday show. We have a lot going on today. Hopefully, you've been enjoying our live stream coverage of IBC. There's been lots of exciting products and announcements that have been made. So we have some of our IBC panel here today. So feel free to ask them questions about it in Mukana. We have a special second hour for us today. We have Zoom that will be interviewing live from the show floor at IBC. So be sure to save your Zoom questions for our second hour topics. Mitchell, let's get into our questions.
Josh. Appreciate that. Our first question is for Mark Giuliani, who's in Washington, and also here on our panel today. What was the most interesting release during IBC?
Sky?
Who was it that is going to be doing 8 isolations? Is that the Zoom connected with Blackmagic? Oh my goodness. That, and it's just getting more robust as far as what it, the quality of material that's being able to be recorded, and separately. So in post-production, you've got those opportunities to change things up. So that, I need to go back and listen more because we were listening and pushing and clicking so many things, but that was a quick one for me.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I think because I got some Discord messages about, I saw your jaw drop when Andy Carluccio said 100 megabit. So to back up a little bit, there was a product from New Tech at a time. They still sell it. It's a way of ingesting Skype. So Skype to SDI. And now we're seeing Zoom take a play out of that playbook, but that was $8,000. You can still buy it, $7,999. And that'll give you 4. We're going to do 8. That's for half the price. It's amazing. So I'd say that's, for me, that's the biggest one.
I see we have Bill and John wants to weigh in.
Yeah, well, I'm going to take a different tack on it. I think the most interesting release at IBC was the release of the Office Hours European crew. Congratulations to everybody. You guys did a fabulous job. And having been in the back end of some of these before, you can't imagine the amount of confusion and things swirling and listening to ears. And to do something like that live when you have no time to practice it, you're literally going live in front of the world that moment and never having had iterations other than just a few rehearsals in the background is really hard. So bravo to everybody involved in this. Great job.
Yeah, they keep getting better. We keep iterating, and it's by far the largest field crew that we've had to date. Go ahead, John.
I concur. The team did a great job. Liberty did a great job. All the panelists, you guys were fantastic. I really enjoyed and was proud to be a audience member watching you guys work. That was great. ZoomISO 2.0 looks fabulous. I can't wait to play with it. I've got the beta. I'm kicking the tires. And the new Sony camera looks pretty neat. I don't know. We'll have to kick the tires on that guy.
Alex.
Just imagine the Zoom. By the way, great job to the IBC team. It was a huge jump forward again. We took a lot of the lessons, took a big crew, an incredible amount of work, and looked really good. So anyway, really, really well done. But imagine the Sony cameras with the ZoomISO is the key to the to the puzzle. But I really do think that one of the biggest things that we saw as far as an update is ZoomISO. I think that one of the things that we're looking at, because we've been testing it, those Fridays that we've been doing, we're testing ZoomISO V2, and it was kind of amazing to watch the density speed up, to see more and more, like, oh, can we do 8? Can we do 12? Kept on adding those on and just couldn't believe that what we were getting. I think that I just wrote a LinkedIn post to make sure that during IBC people know that they should go over there and look at it. But I took something out of the LinkedIn, but I'm going to say it here, is that everyone is either going to be using ZoomISO for their virtual events, or they're going to be bidding against people who do. And you do not want to be on the wrong side of this one. Like, it is a huge jump forward in our ability to produce events. And the fact that you can get that kind of density out of an M1 is pretty stunning. And we're going to be using what you saw, those test feeds, which some of the people here were in, but what you saw are those test feeds that are going into the Zoom booth. We're going to make those available pretty regularly inside of Office after hours, so people can jump in. It's a full conversation. So it's 10 minutes of just people talking to each other and actually that makes sense. And so you'll be able to, jump in with ZoomISO version 2 and, test things as you get up to speed. We realized that, Andy realized it before me, that we have no way to test it once we get going. You can go up to after hours and do it, but I think this will be great to be able to have so anytime we're not using those PCs, we're going to leave those, we're going to kind of keep them running so that people can jump into that meeting, in that test period, that 1 to 3 test period. We'll turn them on any days that we're not using the PCs. What that is, by the way, is JJ figured out how to set OSC. Set OBS to all play at the same time, and then they all have their own Zoom people that are jumping into a Zoom meeting. So if you're excited about it, we are going to focus extremely hard on ZoomISO over the next couple months, and so this is definitely going to be the place to figure it out.
Yeah, this is definitely, our community is tuned into the future, which we feel, if broadcasting, Zoom has a big part of that. So we'll be looking forward to more of that in our second hour. Sky and Liberty, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I realized I've been spoiled. I used to see Grant almost every day 2 years ago, but then life happened and children and family and things. So to have Grant 2 days in a row this week, this is a blessing beyond. And then also to see Richard behind the scenes there and Ken. And again, I just know that the work these people have put into it. And it's just, this continues to get better. And thank you again, Alex, as you created a nutrient-rich attitude. And it's being adopted and continues to grow.
I just want to say one of the biggest successes of IBC, beyond it just being a huge jump as far as the coverage, was how little I did. So this was really the fact that the team, really figured this all out on their own, took the learnings that we had before and really needed me very little, I think is a huge success by itself. And that's been the case for all of these, is the teams have been doing most of the work on, the 99% of the work. And
but the attitude, you established a mindset. So I want to give credit where credit's due, sir. So
but I still just want to applaud the team. It's really,
absolutely,
really a lot of hard work there.
As we move the responsibilities around, we're able to take on larger and larger projects. So we're looking forward to how things go. We're getting our reps in.
The one thing I want to say about that is that it is important that, as we learn how to do these events, what we are learning how to do is a seamless event globally that all of us can use on a lot of other events. So these events are great, but they just give us a lab to figure out, there was one point where I was like, Grant is talking to someone on the show floor. We have and Liberty's there. We have a host in Atlanta and a panelist from Adelaide and Guy in Seattle and Sky in Seattle, and they're talking to people in Amsterdam. And there was a couple points where it was so seamless. You were like, "Whoa, that's something else." And it's not trivial. Like, I've done a lot of these 2 ways and everything else. That pipeline of getting all of that working and everything else, we're making huge jumps every single one of these. But this isn't something that is just covering trade shows. This is understanding how to build these conversations, these global conversations where no one's left out, and being able to figure out how do we have anybody be able to throw those questions in and out. It's really, and these are just great labs to do it in. So really well done.
Yeah, the casualness with which we bring our panel to the floor and vice versa. I think anyone that first takes a look at that takes a second look. Liberty?
Yeah, and just tying it all together, that to be able to do that, to be on the floor, because I can't say when I'll ever be able to head over to Amsterdam just in all the things, but I was able to be there, and the tie-in to us now being able to break it down, and for Alex to even share the part of listen, this is me waving, ZoomISO, pay attention. So all of those pieces, but how our global community was on the floor, and then also us being able to break it down. I did a lot of research beforehand to prep for IBC, and the content that's out there, these are unique experiences that we're able to unpack for anyone who's watching. So that I think is the most exciting part for me.
And Mark?
Okay, for those of you familiar with the McLaughlin group, the panel is entirely wrong. the best release was the lack of a release of NDI from Blackmagic Design and the response that the rep from Blackmagic Design had when John Barker asked the question.
It was the kindest way of saying no I've ever seen. Like, this is never going to happen. So it was like a question. So it was, I thought he handled that well.
Fantastic. Well, let's go to our next question. We actually have some technical questions. Mitchell?
And here they come from Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana. Any recommendations for a tester to see the actual voltage and amperage of a USB-C connection? I've got a mini PC that lists as 12 volts on its power adapter, but nothing else PD or QC will power it up.
Courtney?
Well, I use these little, this is from Ruidig. You can see it here. It's a USB-C. It takes USB-A, USB-C, USB inputs from USB micro A. And it does show you, here I can cut to a graphic of it. It's a little easier to see. It has a variety of different displays in it where you can see voltage and amperage consumed. So it has an input and an output. And it automatically recognizes USB-C and fast charge. So it shows you that information. Plus it has a graphing section in it so that you can actually graph your input over a period of time in a little moving graph that records it. So it's quite capable. They're about $22, as you can see from that Amazon listing. And I've been really quite happy with mine. It nice color display, lets you click through all the inputs and outputs, and gives you a good handle on what's happening. I'm not sure if it would solve your problem. Maybe your USB-C mini PC that lists as 12 volts is not talking correctly to the any other meter or power adapter that you're using, but that could be the problem. Something like this could help you get to the bottom of it, though.
Grant, do you have another recommendation?
Yeah, and this is a great example of this awesome community, because Chris has asked a couple of questions about this. He's trying to fix this problem of running the PC from the car, right? And finding the right adapter to do it. My guess in that is that, as Courtney was saying, I don't think that in order for power delivery on USB-C to work, it needs to get data back to ask what it wants and to say, give me 12 volt. And I'm guessing that the computer is off. There is no data. There's nothing being sent. It's waiting for power, and it just needs straight through 12 volt power. And so that's why it's not actually requesting it. It's probably getting 5 volt. It may be getting 5 volt, and it's just not enough to kick it in. Those little adapters are awesome because I use them on planes and places where you've got no idea. This little USB that's on a plane, how much current can I get from this? And then it gives you an idea of how long you're going to be able to charge something, how long it's going to take. But keep coming back, Chris. We've got you back. We're going to find a solution that's going to make this computer work in the car.
Fantastic. Jeffrey?
After Chris suggested this a couple of days ago, I was doing a little bit of research. In fact, I have all the YOLO Live boxes that I've been doing a lot of testing on. They just put out a video on amperage because the YOLO box takes a 3 amp plug, so you just can't use any USB plug to put it in there. On the question at hand here, and I put the link into Makana, Pluggable, the one that's the company that makes those little devices that you can plug in for the M1 to create extra HDMI HDMI screens. That's the word. Does have a USB-C option for that, so they can check the voltage on that. Keep in mind that a couple different things. First of all, you're getting something that's going to be reading through your USB device, so make sure it's trusted, so it's not trying to collect data or anything like that. And two, if you're testing Thunderbolt 3 and Thunderbolt 4, I have not found anything that will do a test like that just yet. If somebody finds something, please let me know.
And Peter, you want to finish this up?
So where Dennis is showing a link to a page, and it's out in the notes as well, that says we all have to remember, and Courtney touched on it earlier, this all this stuff, power delivery requires that both ends talk to each other. So, and it's a digital transfer. That part is a digital transfer. And if they're not talking, you're not going to get power. Just as simple as that. So this particular article describes all the pin outs. So it's not just a question of taking a digital multimeter and saying, yep, I've got 12 volts at 3 amps. It's, are all the pins active, and am I getting the data across those pins that I want?
And Alex, did you have something to add?
Yeah, if you're trying to power it from the car, I just bought one, and I've tested it successfully so far with a laptop. It's a 130 watt USB-C fast charge, car fast charge charger. I'll put the link into it, but it seems to work just fine. It has a fan to give you how much I was pulling out of the car charger, but it shows compatibility. I'll put a link in Mukana, but it shows compatibility with most laptops. And I tested it. It just showed up last night. I just tested it. It was based on your question earlier. I went ahead and bought one and plugged it in and it's about $30. And it seems to be powering my laptop quite nicely. And there's a long list of PCs, laptops that it lists. I don't have any PC laptops, but my Mac is going fine.
Thanks, Alex. Let's go to our next question.
And it's from Christian Ortiz in South Florida. Christian asks, has anyone used any of these Kate backdrops for streaming? Are there any specific colors or patterns that should not be used?
Bill?
I haven't used those specifically, but photo backgrounds like that, there are a variety of vendors who make them. They've been traditionally used for still photographers to do things like graduation photos and things like that. Two things to think about when you're looking for them. They tend to be vertical rather than horizontal. So if you're using them for streaming video, that can be an issue. Yes, on the pop-up ones, as you're seeing here in the upper left, you can turn them sideways. And if they're large enough, you can get a pretty decent background for video. They are modeled. I used to have a modeled background here on the show. Alex and I used to talk a lot about whether or not the modeled background itself was creating a little more stress on encoding as opposed to a clean, patternless background. I don't know if we ever fully got to the end of that, but I just saying they can work. They can be nice. They also look a little dated to me, and that's just the idea that these were really popular in the 70s, 80s, and 90s for like graduation photos. So the look is not as contemporary as a clean background, in my opinion, but that's an aesthetic choice. That's kind of how they function.
Mitchell?
I stay away from plaid. Doesn't work.
Plaid is bad.
Alex?
Yeah, it is a little bit dated, as Bill said. It also does put stress on it. So a modeled background is adding more data that has to be managed. It's not that bad as long as it's not moving. But when you add more detail behind somebody, it means that some of the data that could have been used for you to look good is being used to make that background look good. So the more detail that you have back there, that's why short depth of field is actually not just good because it's not just good because it looks good. It's because it actually simplifies the background and makes it easier to compress. So in the same sense, modeled backgrounds and complex backgrounds are not great for WebRTC specifically. Streaming, it's fine. But WebRTC specifically, it defeats the temporal compression or starts to defeat that, and it's not something that you actually want to do. I would really strongly suggest sticking with something that is there. Now, if you use something photographic, you really want short depth of field because it will disappear into the background if it's blurry enough, but you don't want to show off that it's a flat background.
Fantastic. So it depends on the application. Let's go to our next question, Mitchell.
Next question coming in from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. What were the lessons learned from today's IBC broadcast?
Grant?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think we're all doing a standing ovation for the team behind this, right? And I think everyone really is. The interesting thing is, if you ask some of the audience, they would have a different perspective. Right? They would look at it and go, "Oh wow, they missed a cue there, and they went to a black screen there, and panelists didn't seem to know what they were doing there, and like they could really say that was a really bumpy ride." And I think, and there's no judgment from me saying this, right? What it tells me is there is no shortcut to muscle memory on skill for these sorts of things. There is skill in the muscle memory in our vocal cords to be able to. It's a whole nother level to step up in this talent area. but there's skill across all areas of the people operating. And I think that the standing ovation is that technically it is outstanding what they achieved. It really is. But what there is now is we all just have to commit to just the hours that it takes to getting this better and better and better in each one of those discipline areas, having to, follow cues and execute this at the right time. It's really hard stuff. And I think some of us from a tech background, we can lean heavy on getting all the tech right. And then sometimes we just haven't quite got the hours up on just executing and just doing this straight task, And so that's a key learning for me, is more opportunities for us to for us to do this, perhaps not so publicly as well, right? Like just being able to just put the hours in of practicing and getting that muscle memory. But don't hear any of that as a judgment of what the team did. Outstanding.
Well put, Grant. Guy?
Yeah, a lot of the same. I mean, watching Liberty step up and just with a smoothness, because I could see, the moderate chaos that's going on in the background, and she's just cool as a cucumber, just hanging out. And that's what you got to do by putting in the reps, is you learn to get comfortable, and then just remembering that it's humans, so be gracious. Like it was cool when we thanked, I think it was Blackmagic, how gracious he was, and remembering that people are just humans. I sometimes forget, I get so tech in the weeds that like when I asked, what does it sound like there? What are people saying? Because we're trying to bring the show to the people. So you got to remember, they're sitting in their couch, they don't get a feel for the blisters on your feet like we do when we go to NAB or some of these shows. So it's just a reminder of, hey, our goal is to bring the show to the people. So what do the people want to know? What are they thinking? They want to get all their senses touched, with auditory, visually, and then if you can touch their heart. I mean, that's amazing. So I'm impressed with what we were able to do with truly communicating. I mean, yeah, there was these moments where it was just like, Grant's way over there. And then Edwin behind the scenes was feeding us the countdown timer, and he was in Mexico, I think, like on a rooftop. And I'm like, Edwin's on a rooftop in Mexico. Like, this is crazy. And then Mickey's in my ears in the Philippines. Yeah, it's just wild. So hats off to everyone.
Fantastic. Liberty?
Yeah, I co-sign with both of what's been said by Guy and Grant, but also especially just even the rehearsal factor and like how this was a massive production. Like, even if we had like a dot map or something to like show all of those elements, I think it would really blow people's minds. But then also the reps, getting those reps in, and just having knowledgeable talent, like how important that is. Because I haven't had a chance to watch it back, but Emma's recoveries, John's recovery, them able to really speak also on behalf of the community who actually uses the product, and to add those questions into it all. It makes a huge difference. And for, yes, the element of when you have to recover when something happens, and then just the collaboration, because even in our rehearsal time, we all have varying experiences, both tech and on camera, and being open to what people have to say, and like, oh, wait, you know what? I never thought about it, but great point. The human touch, the this factor, wait, can they hear us? And just all of those elements. So as Sky said earlier, of just how the spirit in which you come into these kind of projects with, you definitely have to be open.
And Courtney?
Kudos to you, Liberty, and the rest of the panelists and all the behind-the-scenes crew. First time, I'm usually on the panel, so I never have a chance to listen to what's going on behind the scenes. So this morning, I got up extra early, logged into the Zoom room behind-the-scenes panel to watch what's going on there, and watched the first hour or so with listening to all the comms and all the behind-the-scenes stuff, and it was quite an eye-opener for me. And the second half I watched on YouTube on the big screen. So it came off as a very slick looking production and I'm amazed the improvements that we've made since NAB by adding the ability to have IFB for the people being interviewed was a great improvement. The only thing I could say that might help things in the future that caused a bit of a flummox was being able to filter the Makana questions to the specific booth that we're in would be a very handy thing to have, so that you don't ask a question for another vendor at the booth that you're at. And that happened a couple of times, or at least one time. So being able to make sure that the hosts on the ground, the boots on the ground people, know, when they step into the booth of Sound Devices or Blackmagic, that they filter the Makana questions for just that particular vendor, so they're not asking questions that are impertinent to that particular one. Other than that, I think it went beautifully.
Sky.
I think the sermonic question was, and yes, Courtney, I think the questions were according to the categories. So it was up to the person asking the question to give the different locations. And yeah, we're all learning, even the producer, as well as the producers behind the scene. The two values that I've seen that just brought the smoothness to this were the 2 months that they started talking about this and finding the humans and finding the talent and finding the, by the ways. And again, that Josh has been on some of these previously live events, and they allowed Noah to bring in the comments, and John and Chris and things like that. It's like, okay, well, we've put our nose up against that grindstone. Do you want to do that, or do you want to try to do something different? So putting the right people in the right place, that was another huge thing. And then Alex, again, to the point of rehearsal. Yesterday, we were able to just do it, not just a tech, but also an interact and integration of the human factor. And Grant and Guy and Liberty and I were able to, maybe we should do it like a walkie-talkie, so that who is talking when is much more clear and to the point. And again, this is all things that we've learned, and hopefully we'll share, and it'll get even more better in the future.
And I just want to jump in and say that Sky was a last minute ad, and you wouldn't know if I did not say that to you right now on how fluid, and he literally got thrown into the fire and rose to the occasion.
I don't know how to do it otherwise, Liberty, but thank you.
Good thing you brought your aperture light, Sky. Alex?
Yeah, I think I just want to underline what Grant was talking about. I think that as we do it, there's a reason that we didn't have a lot of competition. There wasn't a lot of people wandering around the floor doing live hits from the stage. You know why? Because it's really hard. It's what we're doing is really hard. This is, and it's a really hard thing to do in an organized way, and it's really hard to tie all the stuff together. And I'm just really excited about, that we're, I have to admit that I was like, I don't think that I've purposefully, for the most part, stayed out of these shows, other than a couple things, because I don't want to infect them with my always way of doing things and my filter of, that won't work, or that won't work, or that won't work, and just let the teams do what they're going to do. And I'll agree with some things and not agree with others. The one I didn't agree with was I was like, we shouldn't be giving them IFBs to the folks that are in the booth. I was like, that's number one, I don't like listening. I usually don't even hand them a mic, let alone let them have an IFB. And I was like, that's gonna be a big mess. And it worked out great. That was something I learned. I was like, that's kind of magical. To have a host, have someone on the panel asking a question of someone in the booth. I was like, okay, that really worked. so anyway. Yeah.
And they hit it really well, and that was where I dropped the ball on that first one. I didn't even know that he had it in, and so I was so confused. But they did such a great job of putting it in. They did awesome.
Yeah, it was great. It was really
Love
good.
that interaction. Mitchell?
Yeah. Never had more people come together, and volunteers at that, to do such a great production. I look forward to the opportunity to see another iteration at another show to see how much better we can get, because at this point I think that Alex could probably contact any of these shows or whomever, and we get some serious credibility when the time comes.
As it gets better, I mean, the big thing is we'll build a sizzle reel out of this, and I want to use that to try to get us a booth at NAB New York. Can we get some space that we can actually hub from? We'll see what happens. But the point is that every success that we make on this opens up the doors, allows us to. The ones we did before allowed us to talk to LiveU, and LiveU was like, that looks great, and let's figure out how we work together, and Electrosonic. I mean, that was kind of friend of stuff I've done in the past. But it's the point is that us doing it, I'm not saying we're doing it, here's what we've done in the past, and then when it gets that much better each time, it's going to make it easier and easier. I think within a year, it'll be the best coverage that's ever been done. I mean, I think it's close to the best coverage that's ever been done for any of these events. Like, we're almost there right now, like in a handful of tries. And within another 2 or 3 shows, it will literally be the best coverage of these events that's ever existed. So it's really, really exciting.
Yeah, it's really exciting when we're thinking about things for the first time, but having done some of these, we've got some B-roll from other events we're able to use. We've got something to show for it. So yeah, that's fantastic with our iterations. Bill?
So I'm more and more convinced every month that goes by post-pandemic that the single criteria for human beings to succeed in these coming times are personal agility and the ability to change. And that's what you're seeing play out live here. Most of the technologies that we've employed to do what we're doing here on the show every day, and certainly an extraordinary example of that is the coverage from IBC, is people stepping up into things that they have not had a chance to practice at before because this technologies didn't exist. And the fact that so many people on this wide office hour team are stretching themselves into the ability to do new things immediately. I mean, number one fear for most people is public speaking. We've got people who for the first time are standing in front of a global audience and having never done that before, and they're succeeding. And I just think that's extraordinary. And hats off to everybody who participates in this entire experiment for being the kind of people who are willing to change and adapt and become something new when it's called for.
Yeah, I want to just point out that Chris Widner in the chat mentioned that more bodies on the ground makes everything easier. Definitely so. Something we wanted to do for earlier shows, but we really were able to pull it off. Great to have that to pull on. And Jonas brings out too a lot of prep time that we had for this and the core team that met weekly to push things forward. Go ahead, John.
Courtney touched on what I was going to say. Paul, all due respect, you asked 2 questions on products that those exhibitors didn't have, which I was a little embarrassed. So that tells me that those questions need to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Curated.
Well, speaking of curation of questions, we're about halfway through our first hour, and we may not get through all of our questions before we pull on Zoom. So please vote up the questions that you want us to consider for the second part of our last hour. And Guy?
Yeah, I look at these as the iterations are fun to watch now. Before I was like, man, we just need to go straight to Electrosonics on the audio. We just need to go straight to LiveU. But what I realized is we need to take some of the arrows in the back so that people could learn and see and feel what it's like to take a wireless hit in the middle of a show. And then you feel the pain, and then you're like, oh, that's why I need to spend a little bit more, reach out for a favor and spend the time. And then the rehearsals and all that prep. I mean, everybody just, it's amazing to me to see this community come together and really put in that time, because it took a while. I mean, they were talking about this months ago, as Jonas was saying, and to get that lift behind it, it's amazing. So hats off again.
Yeah, and I'm sure that we'll have opportunity to salivate on this and go over it a little bit. Scott, did you have one quick thought?
Yeah, quick one was the integration. And this is, again, coming from John and Richard, realizing each of them had their own independent systems, but then pulling it together on the location, on the day. We need to add more buffer to that, because that I'm starting to hear that as a thing. We all have our own ways of doing something, but once we get it in the same room, that's we're still getting better. We're getting better at that.
Yeah, so stay tuned for our second hour when we're able to pull some of our back end and field crew in and get to talk to them. Next question.
Chris Widener from Lafayette, Indiana. Chris asks, I have a nonprofit that I volunteer with that is trying to build engagement and is looking for ideas. Any suggestions for self-guided tours of historic sites? We tried Guide by Cell as a service and the demand was non-existent.
Jesse.
Sure. One idea might be whereas the typical sort of museum or self-guided tour is audio only, you may try integrating video or even live video where the participants can sort of walk up to a site and ask someone on the remote end, maybe they're broadcasting from home or something, a question about history or about the particular site. So that might be one way to do it.
Alex?
A couple things. One is that you QR codes are really useful as far as like if you're doing self-guided or being able to just point your phone at it. It doesn't mean you don't really have to build an app. You can have a web page that just has the information that you want to hand to people that could either be video or audio. And we've used that in a couple different, not so much permanent installations, but some temporary ones to a lot of success. The bigger version of that is using something like ultra wideband or Bluetooth LE. We've used Bluetooth LE on a couple of them. They actually. It turned out the QR codes were easier. So because you know what they're looking at. Bluetooth LE isn't accurate enough to, if you get two things too close together, it doesn't know where to go if you're not standing close enough. So the other thing to think about is that you have to do things over and over and over again. You can't put out something and say, oh, well, there's nothing. I thought that there was a great post about YouTubers, where someone posted and said, your first 100 videos are going to have like 50 views, and if you look back on TikTok, the first 100, 200 is oftentimes 60 likes and 80 likes, and then suddenly it snaps and it starts to go up if you're doing good content. So you really have to look at all of these things as a campaign. Like, we're going to do this for the next 6 months or the next year, but 6 months is like the minimum. Like, there's no like, we're going to do it once or twice. It's that we're going to keep on doing it because you have to get better at doing it. People have to know that it's there. They have to see it. And then you have to keep on getting better and better. One of the things that we have done a couple times for these events is had somebody who maybe isn't technical, doesn't know the location very well, but they got a phone and they stream that phone. They stream the video out to, and when we did this before, it was with Hangouts, but they'd stream it to Hangouts, but we would have 3 or 4 experts. They don't have to show up. Like, they just know the subject. They're coming in from home and they're talking about it and answering your questions online. So people can be watching the video, and all you need is a camera person there. The hardest part is getting the expert lined up to do this. It's usually much easier to find someone with a cell phone that can do that, maybe on some kind of stabilizer, and they're just moving around. And as they look at it, you have the folks doing it, and there's a huge future in this. So I just want to say, be excited about it and keep playing with it because it's worth it. But don't force your experts to show up at the venue. Get them to just come in over there. Get them a good mic, and have people be able to look at the video and listen to them answer questions for you as you're going. It's a lot easier to execute over and over and over again because you want to be doing these like every week or every month. But really, I would go every week for 6 months minimum to figure this out.
Got Sky.
Well, yeah, and that's educating your audience about what the tools are available. We used to go into these museums and they would hand us an entire audio kit, and it would know how to do that effectively, the GPS of it. But now we have the ability to point our phone and listen to the audio thing, and we point our phone at the QR code. And that's been very helpful in the recent experiences I've had here in the Seattle area. But I also remember the old technology was we would buy a CD and then we would drive around at Gettysburg and it would tell us something about that location that we were at. And that was very useful and very helpful. But again, I think could be modernized with how it's being delivered now, since mobile devices are in almost everybody's hands seemingly. So I like Alex's point about getting the expert to talk about it. The last thing I'm going to say though is I did go to a Banksy exhibit recently, which is curated of Banksy's material, and I felt awkward because the material was originally in its location to make a statement. And so I was reading the information on the side and thinking, wait a minute, I need to be experiencing what is the emotion that is happening rather than being interpreted by somebody else. So live in the moment, but also having that opportunity from somebody else's knowledge is valuable too.
And Liberty, do you have any ideas about getting engagement?
Yeah, I was actually thinking that it would be helpful to have a little bit more context on like audience and just what they would use, because it might be a demographic issue. But about around 2010, when QR codes, 2008, 2010, QR codes, to Alex's point, worked really well. But there were also a lot of campaigns that were around scavenger hunts. So it might also be the packaging of how these self-guided tours take place. So if it's something that's a little bit more engaging and fun, that might be something that could help with just the overall engagement.
Nice. Jeffrey?
I like Alex mentioned YouTube, but what I really like is the fact that you can actually put together a playlist, and you could even get influencers or experts or both to do these videos, because I'm assuming everything has got to be low cost here for nonprofits, unless you have a budget for this. So you could literally curate a playlist of other people's videos that you could then tell people go to this playlist, and it also depends on if each station is close by, or if they're driving to one area to see one thing and then driving to another place to get to experience another thing. But you can give that a try and see what's already out there and add it to the playlist, because I don't think that's going to be any type of problem if you're showing that, as long as it follows under your guidelines for language and everything like that.
Do you have an idea, Peter?
Well, I was kind of like with Liberty. I was trying to figure out what the demographics were. I mean, we did a few of these things, particularly during the kind of the inverse during the pandemic, height of the pandemic, where we organized some virtual tours of things like the National Air and Space Museum for Cub Scouts across the country, and we set that up. We did find, to your point, Alex, about carrying a phone around as a camera. That worked well, except when they decided to go inside the B-17 bomber and all that metal just completely washed out the signal.
That'll be a problem.
And Courtney.
Well, one thing, if you're at a historical site, I kind of cringe at having people watching videos on their phones if they're at the site themselves. So I think an audio tour is the way to go. Maybe have a map up with hotspots on where you are. You just click on that hotspot and it plays back the audio describing what went on at that site. And so you can listen to it and soak in the local, what you're seeing, instead of just keeping your head buried in your phone.
Nice. Thanks for the Foley there. Let's go to our next question, Mitchell.
Peter Belbin in Houston, Texas. Where can information be found that documents the entire pipeline setup infrastructure that the IBC coverage leveraged?
So what you might want to do is wait for our second hour, where we'll have a little bit of an expose about how we did stuff for this particular production. You could reach out to Noah Sargent. He made a template after some of the productions, and that template was then given to Brian Shan, and Brian has worked on it too, to make something that's more of a template, something that we can take instead of going from scratch and pick up and iterate onto. So you might want to reach out to him, but stay tuned as some of our future productions. We're very open about how we do these things, and that opens us up to learning and also critiquing about our process. Let's go to our next question.
Guy Cochran in Seattle, Washington. Guy is also here on the panel. What LiveU decoder was used at Accidental for the IBC feeds?
See, I wanted to look into the chat to see if any of our production folks had.
I'm pretty sure it's an LU 4000.
Yeah, somebody put up the graphic in the queue. So I'm looking at the encoders, and we talked about the LU 800, the backpack with the 8 modems, which was impressive. But I was concerned with what's on the other side, what's receiving this. And so getting to see behind the scenes, as the previous question was mentioning, like, what is that entire flow? Because it was very seamless. I was impressed that we didn't see any like broken pixels. We didn't have any dropouts that I saw. So it's super stable for that environment. So I'm impressed with the pipeline.
And I think that the LU 4000 and the LU 800 are able to do HDR 4K. We didn't do that on this one, I think. I think we were happy to get 1080p, but expect us to do HDR 4K within the next 2 events.
And I see Jonas in the chat says that they had 2 decoders managed remotely, LU 4000 and LU 800. Bill?
And speaking of that, did you guys document it? Or did anybody take still photos of behind the scenes of all the setups and things like that? Because if we have a big discussion of it coming up, we could really use the content to see what you did. I always forget to do that. I get so interested in actually doing the production that I forget to grab my phone and document what I did. So if there's anybody still on the floor listening, try to do that for us.
You got to tell us ahead of time, Bill. We can't go back.
I know. I wasn't in. I'm sorry. I should have said that a day ago.
Go ahead, Alex.
I literally tell my producers, I expect you to come back with 100 photos. Like like 100. Like, I don't care. Like you better come back with 100 useful photos, or there's going to be trouble. Because it's just it's so important to document, because it's A, for PR. It makes everything easier. B, it is much easier to document what you did, so that 6 months later you go, oh right, we did that part there. It's super valuable. So I don't know if I did ask earlier, but I don't know if it happened or not. Do we know if we got any photos? Hopefully we did.
Dave says in the chat that there were plenty of pictures and videos. So
great.
We've got a
excellent
lucid link populating.
Outstanding. Well done.
Let's go to our next question.
Jonas Dottel from Stuttgart, Germany. How was the IBC behind-the-scenes experience for those listening and watching?
Mitchell, what was your experience?
It was incredible. I mean, I had no idea what to expect, and I've watched all of the programs up to this point in time. And I don't think NASA has as much communication as we do, because all they have to do is launch a rocket. But we had juggling all of these various and sundry video feeds and people and a panel and probably a lot more than I know. So you got to hear both sides of it, which was really cool. You kind of get a sight. The behind the scenes tells you a lot about how smooth everything is and how well organized. And I think the problems were handled very quickly and very professionally. And got to remember, this is a bunch of volunteers. They don't all do this every day. So it was fun to watch.
Yeah, we could probably do a rocket launch too, but just that little detail there for NASA. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I was quite amazed at the complexity and Mickey calling those shots before the. I watched for about 45 minutes before the show actually went live on YouTube, and there were a few hiccups there and a few panicky times. And listening to having the comms and to be able to hear all the comms at once was quite amazing. To hear all the conversations going back and forth to try and avert the train wrecks, which are always inevitable in any live show. And they did a brilliant job at pulling it off, I think, in spite of the fact that the people that were running it, all the behind the scenes stuff, were scattered all over the world.
Yeah, having a feed to be able to listen to it like no other community that I know of does, having that back channel comms and watching on it, that's a fantastic experience for learning and critiquing. Mitchell, do you have a thought?
Yeah, I just wanted to once again remind you, Alex has said before that if you were to hear behind the scenes stuff going on during Monday Night Football, for example, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't go right that they just cover over so well and makes it a seamless broadcast for the viewers. And I think the same is starting to happen to us. I think it is happening with us.
Yeah, it's a good point. So we'll get to see just how things turn out okay by having that back view. Let's go to our next question.
Eduardo Augustine from Panama is here. So after Apple's announcements for the iPhone 14 using eSims, can we really call this a world phone? What about LATAM, which still uses SIMs? No iPhone 14 for LATAM?
Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, so this has been really interesting over the last few months. I've seen in Australia all the carriers move to eSIM, or at least offer eSIM. And interesting, I'm coming to the States in a week or so. And the interesting thing was, I was looking about prepaid SIMs and things. Now you just can download a T-Mobile app. I can do it before I leave. And I can purchase an eSIM before I get on that long haul flight. And it's going to work when we land. So I'm actually quite excited about eSIM. When you're talking about Latin America, I hear what you're saying, that they're perhaps slower to innovate or to move to the new technology. And I guess that was where Apple came down on, let's just make all the the ones sold in North America, let's make all them with no SIM slot or tray. And that'll force the hand of all these other carriers around the world. If they want to have Americans travel and use their phone, then they're going to turn on eSIM, and it'll be one or two carriers to start with, and they'll get all the work. And then SIM cards are the writing is on the wall for SIM cards, physical SIM cards. It's all over.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for those of us that like to move them between devices. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I totally agree on all of that. If you're traveling, it makes it a lot easier because you'll have international day passes for T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, and they go to a lot of the places that you go. I know in Latin America, there are a few less of those places where you can get an international day pass than, say, like Europe or any place like that. So, but you definitely have to double check on that. If you are in Latin America trying to get an iPhone, then you're probably going to have to use it tethered to another device that can accept the eSIM, unless Apple decides, hey, let's make a specific iPhone for Latin America right now that does accept an eSIM, but I highly doubt that's going to happen.
And Alex, you want to finish this up?
Yeah, I actually think that Apple makes a regular SIM for the rest of the world. So US is the only one with eSIM only. So so you can use there's SIMs for if you buy it outside the country. so if you buy and that might create a demand. I already ordered mine, but it might create demand for people to buy actually Apple products outside of the US if they really want that SIM for travel. But it is the future. It's really a security based thing. Your eSIM is a pretty big security hole that Apple has just closed up. And you're going to see Apple continue to do that, is just keep closing security. They're basically they're blowing the door shut on privacy to a point where a government couldn't pry it opening because Apple won't even have the ability because it's already embedded in the hardware. That's what we're going to keep on seeing them do. Is they're not shutting the door and locking it; they're welding it shut and then collapsing the tunnel on top of it.
I get it. That's a good visual. All right, let's go to our next question.
And it's from Keenan Campbell in Nevada, USA. Can we do a rundown of the kits that the field crews are using? Second hour, maybe, on the production workflow.
Yeah, I don't see why not, Keenan. We don't have anyone on the panel right now because they're in Amsterdam. But Alex, do you have a thought?
Yeah, we're definitely doing a second hour. I don't know if we have the schedule for it, but there's a second hour coming. I know that it's sometime next week or the week after, I think. Yeah, stay tuned for that.
Inquiring minds want to know. Let's go to our next question.
Juan C. Robles from Mexico City, Mexico has a comment. After an inspiring morning, the only thing I can say is congratulations to the IBC team.
Thanks, Juan. I think it's well felt. Let's go to our next question.
And it's from Ronnie Hafse in Tromsø, Norway. In what part of the pipeline used at IBC live broadcast would an improved future tech have big impact on quality or capabilities, except for better wireless or cellular bandwidth?
That's probably the big ones, but go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple of times where the hosts couldn't see the next question. There was a little bit of communication issues there, but I would say that most of it right now is just organizational flow. And I think there's just a challenge with latency. Of things needing to start a little bit earlier in there. But I think it's more really. I felt like we were getting pretty close on the quality of it. I think most of it was operational as opposed to technological at this point.
Bill?
Yeah, I think it's just tuning up of little things. Like one of the things that I noticed was the fact that there was some kind of display of the questions on the camera, it looked like, because in one of the interviews, the question that was coming from Mukana, the person who was being interviewed saw it and started into that, and there was a little confusion. So it's just tuning up those little details. Should those questions be coming to an iPad on the reporter there as opposed to in a teleprompter kind of thing? But these are little tiny tweaks, and we'll fix all of this kind of stuff as we go. And that's the piece of iteration that is happening and needs to happen. What did you think was going to work? How did it actually go? And then what really worked, and can we tune it up so it works better?
And Jesse, where some improved technology we can implement?
I would just say a small one, which is, some of the interviews, they would put a second mic into the representative's hand, and the reporter would sort of pass it back and forth. And I think it's helpful to have that second mic there all the time so that we're not missing anything and we get those extra little moments of time. Audio is pretty challenging in those sort of conference style events, and just minimizing that background noise a little bit, maybe pushing up the noise reduction on the mix pre a little bit. I think that's what was used there, but it sounded pretty good. Maybe 2 mics next time.
And of course, those are procedural ways that we can improve. I think the questioner specifically asked for improved tech Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I agree with Jesse. The mic, a second mic. I was thinking maybe since we're putting an IFB on the person, maybe have an IFB and a lav that we're putting on the person. That way, if the person is not very good at a hand mic, doesn't know how close to put it to their mouth, etc., the lav could be a good fallback. I know in a show, a lav may not give you the best background rejection out there. A good cardioid hand mic would work better. But that, and I'm not sure what their setup was with a confidence monitor, but a confidence monitor, maybe a 15-inch directly under the lens, to let the people know that it's going out live and that when they're on and when they're cutting away from them, when they're cutting back to them, so that they know basically what's going on just by looking at the monitor.
Guy?
Yeah, that confidence monitor is exactly what I was going to say. Some kind of technology. I mean, it could be as simple as an iPad. When we did the Cinegear show, I had Ross Jones holding up an iPhone just to give me programs so I would know what was coming up and where we were at in this super source. It was super helpful as a field reporter, and it added credibility to the exhibitor to see what was going on, especially if they could see the reactions on the other side, the smiling of Grant or Liberty. When people are laughing at what they're saying, it just means a lot for that human element. Otherwise, they're talking into the void, and they don't get that they're talking to real people at the other side.
And go ahead, Scott.
I think Richard did have some side cameras, camera 2, so that they could zoom in on the products. But I think there was some camera issues. So I think in the future to have that second camera on the product, that would be a nice thing.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll delve into this more, but I do see that we're about to be joined by our Zoom. So we're going to go ahead and push through these questions so we can get to our second hour. Let's go to our next question.
Harshid Trivedi from Daytona Beach, Florida, and here on our panel, what type of accessibility advancements, or any, have you seen at IBC this year?
Go ahead, Grant.
There's lots. I'd like to talk a lot about this question, but I'll give a quick answer, and that is ZoomISO with ISO audio. When we're talking about doing meetings across the world, and we're thinking about what is the best experience, we want to get audio really dialed in. And by having individual control over every person in the Zoom meeting, it's going to be a better experience, particularly for people that are visually impaired, who have a sensitivity to audio. It's going to be a better experience for them.
Go to our next question.
Next question from Chris Widener, Lafayette, Indiana. We used to do a World's Affair conference that was approximately 60 school systems, bringing kids to 6 sites across Indiana. With Zoom, if we were to try bringing this back, what would be the best way to test the school systems to optimize the setup?
Go ahead, Alex.
For school systems, especially in a room, what you really want is just a handheld mic. It can be either wireless or wired with a webcam. We've done a lot of stuff with schools, and you just need to be able to pass it around. It's just, you got to keep it simple. You got to put up one of their TVs, plug this in, have a little computer connected to it, and call it a day. For 60 school systems, the number one thing you have to do is actually do a Zoom event with them. Like, get them into a meeting, have them, schedule time. You just got to make sure that you can traverse their IT network, which is usually complicated and dated and not well supported. So that you just have to make sure that it actually is going to work. Speed test, of course, is important as well. But those are the things you really have to dig into. Don't assume anything will work until it actually is working.
Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, hands down, audio is the thing you want to focus on the most. And it's interesting, video conferences of the past and even Skype, that echo cancellation in large rooms was a big problem you had to deal with, and you want to put a mixer in there and do gates and all sorts of stuff. The echo cancellation in Zoom is just outstanding. Like, we know that it works well when we're doing this sort of stuff, but it's incredible even in large meetings, large rooms. I've been doing it recently. I'm all ready to dial it in on the board, and I just don't need to. It's really impressive what it can do, but definitely having a handheld mic rather than trying to collect everyone in the room. Just a handheld, get it right up close to the mouth is the way to go.
And Jesse?
Yeah, and then you got to be careful too, because on the far end, if you're doing live conferencing with other groups or other schools that don't have a refined audio system, you can get acoustic echo cancellation. So you have to, if you get that, At that point, you might have to look into something from QSYS or Biamp or one of the other audio DSP manufacturers to sort of mitigate that remote and AEC.
All right. Thank you for that. Well, now we're going to change gears. We have with us the Zoom team, live from IBC, Andy Carluccio and Jonathan, I see too. Guys, can you hear us?
Be able to talk to you guys today. Yeah, this is great.
Fantastic. Andy, really appreciate being able to pull you in live. This is like a continuation of what we've just done at IBC. How was the experience for you?
You know, it's really exciting. Like I said, this is our Zoom's first IBC, and we're talking about our broadcast solutions, right, for the first time as a company at IBC. So it's really exciting to be able to talk to people about, you know, a real platform for production and be able to show a variety of setups. We actually built in our booth a broadcast studio, right? Like, so we're not just talking theoretically about how to produce these shows. We're actually showing people how to do it with example setups and our partner network, right? So we're really excited to be able to do that. It's been a great show so far. We're really excited about it.
Fantastic. And Alex, what do you have to ask our crew?
On this, you know, in the booth, does it appear that people understand what they're looking at? The broadcasters understand what they could actually get out of ZoomISO?
So it's funny, when they walk into the booth, no. But about 30 to 45 seconds in, you can see it. Like, they get it, and they get real excited about it. So, Jonathan.
I can add to that, too. It's been fun to see broadcasters come walking by and talk to us, and they start off asking, so what we're looking to do is to find some way to pull feeds out from a Zoom meeting so that we can go into an NDI or an SDI network, and we have to stop them right there because that's immediately what we do, and so we step them inside and showcase the demos. But it's been great to be able to really nail the exact needs of some of these customers.
And I know you guys have been sitting on this for quite a while. What have you been most eager to release?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously ZoomISO version 2 brings a lot to the table, and a lot of that, you know, customer demand for certain features we've finally be able to deliver on, right? So isolated audio, right? How many times have I been kind of winking at the panel, right, saying like, oh, I know we're working on it, we're working on it, we can't talk about it yet, but now we can. And we're so excited that not only do we meet the need, which the request that we were getting was embed audio in the NDI outputs, we've actually added an entire audio workflow system to ZoomISO version 2. So I feel like we've exceeded expectations in a number of key areas. I've just been so excited to be able to share that with you guys finally and get to talk about it. Yeah.
And I can share two things as well. So I will touch on the audio. The importance of having that embedded audio, and specifically having the isolated audio both embedded and through a separate audio device. It enables so much more than just the simple use case of being able to adjust levels or add audio processing on a channel basis. It also enables scalability of the whole system, right? Because previously, if you were having multiple different ZoomISO machines but pulling audio just from one system, you have issues with potential desync and other issues with the delay. But now that you have isolated audio, you can fine-tune the delay on a per channel basis. And this really does expand what's possible. And then the second thing I'll mention is I'm very excited with version 2 to finally move to a new user interface and to a new video engine behind the scenes. And what that enables is a much cleaner experience using ZoomISO. You don't have pop-up windows and additional clutter to your interface. It's all very streamlined, smooth, and the way it really should be.
We've been studying, you know, how people have been using V1 very carefully, and we looked at the capabilities of the Zoom platform, and where we saw lack, you know, and where we needed more things in the SDK, we added it, right? And we now are in a position, this is the power of the transaction with Zoom from Liminal, right? Now that we're here, we have the ability to affect change in the developer platform where it's needed in order to be able to build this product. Everything that we did in ISO version 2, a developer could pick up today and do through the meeting SDK. So we're really excited about that, that we've gotten to the platform to a point where we're able to do something like this.
And does the ISO audio feature enable you to do more things with the OSC component? For example, active speaker switching?
Yeah, so there's a variety of things that you can do once you have the isolated audio data. You can do analytics on it in your board and then be able to do your own cut based on audio levels that you're getting from us, right? So, and there's a whole bunch more that we're going to be adding in terms of OSC feature set directly within the app, so that you can right now you can manage the routing of participants to both video and audio outputs. That's new in version 2. But now that you have the individual stems, ISO audio I think is really a key component of professional remote production, right? Like it's something that you have when you're in physical space implicitly because of the microphone layout and things like that. In virtual space, it was a little unclear about how that would be accomplished. But now that we have it, there's so many things that we can do to really improve the capabilities of remote production.
Oh, great. And so we're going to get to our questions. They're stacking up in just a minute. But before we do, a few on the panel would like to weigh in. Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge this is something quite remarkable. Here's a couple of boys from Liminal, for a few years ago, messing around with a Zoom SDK. Maybe we can do this. Oh, maybe we'll play with this. Fast forward a little bit, you get bought by Zoom, and now you're on the world stage representing Zoom in a place that Zoom hasn't been at IBC before. You're now there. Here we are as Zoom. Like, it's pretty amazing. What does that feel like for you boys?
I think we both feel really blessed, to be able to have had that opportunity, right? To have, built a business in the country that we did and the time that we did with the background that we had. There's a lot of, people in our lives, I think, to thank for being able to get us to that position. And it's been exciting to be able to then, take advantage of the opportunity that we had and try to make a difference, right? And so I think we both feel really grateful. And
yeah, I definitely echo everything Andy said about the opportunities, and we took advantage of what was possible, but we also had some great support going through it. But being at IBC here is it's a fulfillment of a dream and an objective that Andy and I have had for a while now. When we first started with Liminal, we made the choice to build our tools off of Zoom because Zoom had the best quality, it had the best SDK that we could innovate upon, and the community built around Zoom broadcasting was really growing strong. So we made the right choices then, and we've carried that all the way through to today. And I will be honest and say that here at IBC, we are the only teleconferencing platform that is currently represented. You don't see Teams here, you don't see any other broadcaster focused on the teleconferencing. And so this is a great way forward for us, and this is hopefully the start of a new chapter of selling these products and bringing these solutions to market.
Okay, and we've got questions stacking up, so let's move to our first question. Mitchell?
And our first question comes, by the way, I'm immensely proud of you guys, and I just wanted to make a toll-free call to Amsterdam, so thank you.
Mitch.
Chris Widener from Lafayette, Indiana. Is the new ZoomISO going to be available by the Zoom account management license process or just separate at Liminal's website?
Okay, so when it comes to licensing, this is what we would call an MSA, a Master Services Agreement. That's how a lot of enterprise customers are purchasing Zoom licenses, right? And now the question, is that because these apps are owned by Zoom, can we attach OSC and ISO sales to an MSA agreement if we're an enterprise customer? The key is to work with your account executive and ask them that very same question, right? So like we're engineers, right? And so we kind of deal with the product itself, not necessarily the sales pipeline. What I can say is that it's something that we can explore right on a case-by-case basis. But the easiest way today is to go through the direct-to-consumer sales platform, which is the Liminal web store through liminalet.com. Now, again, that being said, we haven't really discussed, I think, with this group what the licensing options are. The upshot of it is that while it's an open beta, it's completely free. So I don't think this is an immediate need for anybody right now because it's totally free and available for anybody to try. And then because we have a V1 to V2 license conversion option, which allows multiple months of use if you were a V1 license holder, again, I think that we've bought ourselves some time in order to be able to figure out all the different ways. So we know there's going to be a heavy demand for this product, and we know that people have a variety of different licensing means that they're going to want to be able to employ to do this. We understand that. So we've given everybody a lot of runway to be able to figure out the licensing and work with their account executives and make sure that the solution that we come up with is something that's going to serve our customers.
There's going to be a lot of ISO testing in office hours. I think Douglas Carmichael has a question about licensing as well.
He does indeed, for our Zoom team in Amsterdam. Are there plans to introduce a perpetual license option for ZoomOSC ISO?
So again, I'd say that, right now, all that we are talking about is the subscription options that are available direct to consumer through the Liminal web store. We understand that people have a variety of desires for different license models. We felt that the option that we offered is the one that covers the most use cases, right? Like if you're a gig-based business, you're only purchasing this for the month that you need it, right? And you're not paying a big upfront fee for time when you don't necessarily have productions regularly coming through the door. It lowers the barrier to entry. And again, we wanted to make sure that we can get this tool in as many hands as possible. But again, with all the questions around licensing, right? I don't think it's an immediate challenge because we're offering this free for so many people, right? The V1, V2 license conversion and the free trial during open beta gives us time to be able to figure out alternative methods of getting this in your hands to be able to test when you do eventually want to pay for this. But for now, I just ask for the patience, to allow us to work with the account executives and let Zoom figure out how exactly they want to distribute this. But when everybody should know, though, that the Liminal web store is still going to be a valid method of getting this and probably the easiest direct-to-consumer option.
And for our producers, we do have some room for some more questions. We're at the beginning of our session, but we will be closing shortly. So go ahead and put some questions in if you have any for Andy and Jonathan. Let's go to our next question.
Stan Chan from San Francisco, California. Stan asked, can you provide a dashboard to suspend your subscription when you don't need it? Many SaaS products force you to open a help desk ticket.
Yeah, so we already do this in two different ways. So for license management specifically, separate from the billing, we offer a license management portal that's done. You request that from us, and we give you a login to manage the activations across all the products that you have from us. Now, the question specifically is about managing suspension of subscription, and that is something that we also offer. You don't have to send in a support ticket to do this. You get an email from us every time that there's going to be a recurring charge. You have the option at that time to log into that portal and disable the renewal of that subscription. So it's not, can we already do this. This has already been available from us since we introduced subscription, because I absolutely agree with you that, it should be easy for you to be able to manage both your billing and your license management. So we offer portals for both.
Next question.
Juan C. Robles from Mexico City, Mexico asked, do you have a timetable for the production release of ZoomISO?
Yeah, so right now we're in open beta, and I think I read this question as when is it going to graduate out of open beta? The truth is, we want to incorporate the community feedback, and I feel that if we set a hard date, it doesn't give us the flexibility to be able to incorporate good feedback that we get from the open beta period. So I'm not going to commit to a certain date today because I want to have the flexibility to engage with the community and actually have meaningful changes to the app if they're needed. But what I will say is that I think we're really close with the open beta that we have right now, and I'm putting it out there for the purpose of making it easier for people to get started, lowering the barrier to entry, and allowing us to ramp properly in order to be able to do this. I'm not expecting this to be a super long beta period at all. I just want it to be long enough for people to get some real test results, communicate them to us, and give us the opportunity to make any changes that we might want to make based on the feedback of the community. I don't want to keep this in open beta any longer than it needs to be.
And Andy, do you have a new feature freeze while you're working on the stability of the product right now, or still open to adding new things during the beta?
I think we're open to hearing it. We'll have to make the determination based on resource allocation about whether or not we want to focus on adding new workflows and features at this point, or whether we want to roadmap that for a point release. I think the idea of graduating out of open beta is focused on stability and workflow optimization. But we always are willing to hear new features, right? I mean, ZoomISO version 2 is a testament to that, of all the feature requests that we got from V1. So we're certainly welcoming the feedback, and then we're just going to have to make a determination about whether this is going to be for 2.0.0 or whether it's going to be for a 2.0.1 or a 2.1 based on what the nature of the request is.
Okay, great. Next question.
Peter Belbin in from Houston, Texas. Is ZoomISO for Windows going to be a thing?
So I think the answer is going to be similar to why vMix is not going to be a thing for the Mac, right? So we have built specific optimizations for Apple Silicon. That's one of the hallmark features of ZoomISO version 2, is that we have built on the accelerated scaling and conversion APIs from the vector image suite inside of macOS. That is a very specific acceleration that allows us to achieve absolutely unrivaled performance on Apple Silicon. So ZoomISO version 2 is supported on Apple Silicon and macOS Monterey. We give you a warning if you run it on Intel, and we say that, hey, you might experience a degraded experience. Now, we let you dismiss the warning if you have a specific, understanding of what you're going to be doing and understand that you're in an unsupported use case. We'll let you do it, but we are seeing incredible performance on Apple Silicon, and we're taking advantage of every Apple API available. I don't want to sacrifice our performance capabilities for the purpose of being cross-platform. Now, I do understand that there are legitimate reasons to want to have contribution workflows that are based on Windows systems. And for that, as you saw in June, we added the ability to do 12 NDI outputs from Zoom Rooms, which is a cross-platform solution, right? So we have the cross-platform capability. We're working as a platform. We're finding areas where certain products make sense in certain form factors. And with ISO version 2, we're very focused on being on the tip of the spear, having the best capabilities that are available with the current technology that's available. And for the general solution, when you have more ubiquitous form factors or things that you need to work across a variety of different use cases, we have Zoom Rooms there ready to pick up and work in the cloud, work on other systems, work in Windows environments, and we're adding capabilities to that product as well, as you've already seen.
Next question.
From Grant Whitehead in Adelaide, Australia, and also here on the panel, have there been any tests outputting Blackmagic video out and Dante audio? How's that sync?
Well, I'll let Jonathan speak to a little bit of this as well, but I think what we're, a lot of this depends on your chain, right? Like how many things, are you going through a video hub and then through a Constellation and then through a Terranex or whatever, right? Are you going directly from your board to your mixer, and then how's your mixer getting back mixed into the video? But I think Jonathan and I were talking earlier today, like we are one of the lowest latency solutions when it comes to export. Once it gets out of our app, like we are not doing a ton of processing on top of that. So we have done tests where we have an X32 and SDI outputs available, and everything is within range that you could do some fine tuning on. And again, the power of having a single application that decodes both the audio and the video together means that when it's leaving our chain, it's leaving in sync. And now it's just a question of your chain and how audio and video are being handled as it goes through your network. But when it leaves ZoomISO, it's leaving in sync because it's decoded from the same application and the same processes. Jonathan, do you have anything that you wanted to observe on that as well?
Yeah, no, I think you're definitely right on that. But the key to all of this is that you have the individual ability to tune the timings and the delays as needed. With any system, when you are sending audio and video separate from each other, they will desync at some point. That's just inevitable. But now you have the ability to fine tune and bring that back in. But from our testing, we're finding it to be most importantly consistent. So at no point is it going to fluctuate the latency and the timings between the Blackmagic and the Dante outputs. Those are going to stay locked together. Even if there is a slight difference between them, they're locked together, and so they won't drift over time. And of course, the incoming video from Zoom, that also has built-in correction for any timing adjustments or network issues, and it'll make sure that the audio and video does stay in sync on that.
Go ahead, Alex.
And the one thing I just wanted to say about that is that one of the things we're most excited about is the ISO audio means that we can, a lot of the sync issues are actually coming from the source. As people, especially people who have dual systems like ours, a lot of the sync issues are actually coming from the source. And our ability to go through, and you're going to see this in office hours, and person by person tune that, we can tune all of that sync in real time over throughout the show to get it to be perfect for every single person. And so the ZoomISO, it's one of the big reasons we were pushing so hard, and we're so excited.
And do we do you have plans to have recommended hardware compatibility with your product?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when we're in open beta, so this was a question that Jonathan and I talked about, like, should we be putting up a bunch of example systems and telling you all the pieces of that? And I think that that's a line we want to tread carefully, because it's, in open beta, we're compatible with so many different frameworks, right? NDI, SDI, physical display, siphon, right? There's so many different chains. And then on the audio side, you have literally any multi-channel audio device that you can give to it, in addition to having the audio embedded in the NDI output. So there's a lot of different chains that could be built. Maybe I'll take the opportunity to say, what are we showing at our booth in terms of setups, right? So we have an M1 Mac Mini connected to a DeckLink Quad 2 with 8 SDI outputs going into the ATEM Extreme SDI ISO. So that's that new Blackmagic switcher that has the 8 SDI in. So that's one chain that we're showing off here in our booth. Behind me on my other side is an IP-based solution where we have NDI being generated going into vMix, and then audio being sent both embedded in the NDI feeds and available to an X32, where we have an X-Touch controller. And so we've built a couple of example systems, and that's, so we're showing both IP and copper-based workflows. And again, I wouldn't necessarily say that like this is because these systems are for some reason certified, but they're examples as we're trying to explain to you how to be able to take advantage of the apps.
Go ahead, Alex.
And what's the memory on that Mac Mini? Is it a 16 gig, 8 gig?
8 gig base spec. So that's a $649 purchase from Costco in the US.
And what is the what's the CPU utilization on average?
Right now it's 50% with 8 people going out.
We're really proud of that. Amazing. We're really proud of that.
Yeah.
Next question.
Congratulations, guys. Andy Kokendorfer from Viera, Florida with ZoomISO version 2. How are cam muting Zoom speakers handled? In ZoomISO version 1, I have to clear and respect if a Zoom speaker mutes cam. Thanks.
I think that's probably a typo. I think it means reset on the cam mute. So, okay, so let's talk about video loss modes, another feature in ZoomISO version 2. We allow you to define a custom fallback behavior in the event that you're no longer able to export the participant's video. That can happen for a number of reasons. If they leave the call, if they turn their camera off, right? There's a number of reasons that somebody's video might not be available to Zoom anymore. So we allow you to define a customized behavior on the receive side. So what can you do? You can set it to freeze the frame. You can set it to go to black. You can set it to go to transparent. You can set it to go to a test card that we created, or you can upload your own image and it will fall over to that when we're in what we call the video loss scenario. So that's what that's all about.
We want to learn about IZZY Cast. Next question.
Yes, Jonas Dottel from Stuttgart, Germany. Tell us more about IZZY Cast.
Well, let me bring in Mark Caniglio, the creator of Isadora.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
So they want to know more about IZZY Cast. So what can you tell us, Mark?
Okay. Well, we've taken the Zoom SDK, thanks to our collaboration with Andy. We've integrated that into 4 new actors in Isadora that allow you to connect and create a new session to stream. We don't know how many yet because it's still in alpha, but many streams of 1080p video along with individual channels of audio and data, bidirectional data transfer. And so we can do this on other platforms, right? ZoomISO does it too, but the thing that Isadora is special for is that if you know it's a node-based programming language that you can make an absolutely custom solution where you can mix the video and the sound and route it and present it in whatever way that you choose to do. So unlike, ZoomISO is a great product because it has exactly what you need for that product, but with Isadora, you could create your own solution that does something special. So in the demo that I'm showing here this week, I'm actually connecting with Berlin at a dance studio there. I'm controlling all the lighting. I'm controlling the PTZ cameras there, all remotely from here, sort of as the big director, and having the video come back here. So that's what we're showing in the alpha version, and we're heading for hopefully a public beta sometime around the time of Zoomtopia in early November.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that why did we do this collaboration, right? Well, I feel that as you know, Isadora has been a very critical component of a lot of the production that we've been doing with OSC and ISO, and I feel that the ability to natively integrate Zoom's protocol inside of Isadora gives us a lot of flexibility when it comes to being able to define any customized behavior. So, again, the ability to send the audio, the video, and the data from anywhere to anywhere is a really exciting platform opportunity. We're really excited to work with you on it, Mark. Yeah.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks, Mark.
And Andy and Mark, can you talk anything about the collaboration that you've done in order to bring these features forward?
Yeah, so I can speak to that a little bit. So this is done through our video SDK. So a direct sort of relationship between Zoom and Troikatronics on helping construct these features, give advice to each other about how to improve the platform and how to make that capability come to market. Like Mark said, it's something they're targeting more information on around Zoomtopia. So we're looking forward to that and seeing what we can offer you at that time. But it's been a collaborative opportunity for the two of us to be able to work together, put our heads together, and figure out, all right, here's what we have on our side, here's what Isadora has on their side, and how can we work together to make something that we think is going to be really special.
Excellent. We're excited about that. Let's go to our next question.
From Peter Belbin in Houston, Texas. Does having ZoomISO Pro make it easier, perhaps automatic, to bump the stream quality up to full HD?
Yeah, so in meetings that are 1080p capable, you have a drop-down list where you can pick the resolution of the person that you want to do. So you're not worrying about Zoom's automatic resolution switching, like for active speaker or gallery view or things like that. You're actually explicitly saying, I want this person at this resolution. If we can get them at that resolution, great. The raw data comes in, goes right out to the third-party system. But what if we can't, right? What if you have a 720p webcam that you're contributing to, but you want a 1080 output? Well, that's where the accelerated scaling and conversion APIs effects come in. We have an accelerated method of being able to scale up that video feed or repeat or drop frames as needed to hit the target resolution and the target timings on the dot. So ZoomISO, again, acts as the standardization layer between the variable latency and resolution and quality of Zoom, which optimizes for the speed of the conversation, and the robustness and standardization of production protocols. So it's that bridge, it's that conversion layer in between that makes it so powerful.
And just in case Peter is talking about the portal devices, do any of these appliances do the portal bump up from 360 to 720?
So at this point, I think there's really no reason to be using the portal to bump up meetings, because anybody with a Zoom Pro account or higher can open a request to Zoom, ask for 720p, and we'll get it. And if you have a business account, you can ask for 1080p, and the support team will handle that request as well. Zoom is very serious about supporting, higher quality than 360p meetings. And so I don't think you need to be worrying about hacks or other ways of getting it to happen, right? So ZoomISO doesn't do that, but Zoom does that. So send us an email, right? Tell us what you're working on, tell us what the need is, and by and large, we're granting those requests. So all you have to do is reach out.
Thanks, Andy. Let's go to our next question.
And it's from Jeffrey Powers in Madison, Wisconsin, and also here on the panel. Is Essentials still going to be free?
Absolutely. I think it's so important that we have a free entry point to the OSC platform. It's where we started. The features that were free in the 1.0 version of ZoomOSC are still free today, 2.5 years later. So we're really excited about that. It gives people the opportunity to experiment and begin to get a sense of if this is right for them. And then, of course, there's a whole stack of things on top of that. One thing we haven't talked about is that we dropped the price of ZoomOSC Pro from $35 a month to $19 a month. That's a massive discount, right? So now the new product stack is ZoomOSC Essentials free, ZoomOSC Pro $19 a month, ZoomISO version 2 Lite $29 a month, ZoomISO 2 Pro at $45 a month.
Is it fair to say, Andy, that Zoom are positioning this more promoting Zoom as a product as opposed to, making the return on the licensing fees?
I think, from a strategic perspective, it's important to me to see good events produced on Zoom. I think there's a lot of virtual events out there that don't look good, that are frustrating to be a part of. And I think that ZoomOSC and ZoomISO are tools that allow us to have really high quality conversations online. So for me, market adoption is a really important strategic opportunity for us, right? I think that everything about it is important, right? There's certainly the case to be made about how the products are performing in the market, so that's something that we do care about. But I also think that what's important is that we see a lot of good events produced on Zoom, and again, that's why we're basically giving this thing away. When you look at how easy it is to convert from V1 to V2 and the multiple months free usage and the free, availability to try this in open beta without paying for anything, right? I think we're being very generous with our conversion policy, with our licensing policy. I think our pricing is really aggressive. Again, the table behind me, behind Jonathan is a sub $3,000 system to produce 8 people. It's an incredible price to performance ratio. So I think that's, we want to see more people doing things like that. So we made sure to price it in a way that's possible.
Well put. Great value proposition. Next question.
Grant Whitehead from Adelaide, Australia. And here on the panel, I still have some recent high-end i7 MacMinis in use. How does ZoomISO perform on Intel chips?
So like I said, we're not supporting ZoomISO version 2 on anything other than Apple Silicon and macOS Monterey at this time. Again, that's because we have all those optimizations built in for Apple Silicon. Now, that's not to say that I haven't run it on other machines. And we, like I said, we let you basically say, I understand that this is not the optimum experience. I want to proceed anyway. And so while I don't have any benchmarks that we're going to be sharing publicly because it's not a supported use case for the app, you can run it. And again, your mileage may vary, but there are certainly use cases where, depending on what you're trying to do, ZoomISO can perform under those conditions.
Next question.
Hasmukh Gajar in Cape Town, South Africa. ZoomISO version 1 and version 2 beta. Am I able to install both versions on the same iMac?
Yes, so you can install multiple copies of the application on your computer. So again, I think, why would you want to do that? Maybe you're trying to do a 1 to 2 version comparison, but let me make our guidance on this very clear. We want everybody to move to version 2. Version 2 is a massive upgrade. and it's, for many of you, a free upgrade for a very long, extended period of time. It's an open beta right now, so we understand that maybe not everyone's ready to do that in production, but we want everybody moving to version 2. The capabilities are there, the value is there, and we feel very strongly about the product, so we are encouraging people to move to version 2. But yes, you can install them both side by side.
And I'll add to that too, specifically about the beta tag on version 2, right? So beta oftentimes mean it's unstable or it's unreliable, but we can say right now that version 2 is substantially more reliable than version 1 in many capacities. Yes. And so we really want to push you to try version 2. Try it alongside version 1, that's great. You can do a comparison back and forth, but at the end of the day, we are starting at the level of version 1 and the reliability of that, and then increasing it to a new level. So very happy to see the performance numbers that we can get from that, and the intense reliability of the new video processing engine.
And Alex, did you want to weigh in?
Just to underline, we're going to move office hours to version 2 as fast as mechanically possible. Like literally, I started warning everybody a week ago, here it comes, and we're going to be flipping it over. We have no doubts based on the testing we've done in the last little bit of time that it's going to be an incredible upgrade.
More stability, more welcome. Jeffrey?
And for clarification, if we have V1 and we move to V2, that's V2 Pro, not V2 Lite, correct?
So we offer, so let's talk about license conversion. So there are 2 paths. Again, so no action required right now. Everything is free in V2 because it's an open beta. When it gets out of beta, you're going to have 2 choices if you're a V1 license holder. You can choose to convert your V1 license to a V2 Lite license, and that license will be valid until October 1st, 2023. Or you can convert your V1 license to a V2 Pro license, and that'll be available for the rest of the calendar year. So it'll expire on January 1st, 2023. So there's an upgrade path for both options, and it will expire the V1 key when you convert it to V2.
Will that be a discounted price for the Pro?
So if you look at the value, right? So if you paid $249 for a V1 license, we're offering you $360 towards V2 for your V1 license when it comes to the Lite version. We're offering you, I think it's like $160 if you do the math, based on the amount of time free that we're giving you for V2 Pro. So I think we are discounting it, but the way we're doing it is rather than like cutting money off the subscription price, we're giving you free months of time. And the value, at least in the Lite case, dramatically exceeds the amount of money that you actually paid for the V1 license.
Alex?
Coming from someone who spent $8,000 on 4 channels of Skype TX, which did not work nearly as well as this does. It's a pretty good deal. My boss, the owner of 090, so I sent this out, of course, immediately as soon as on Friday, and he was like, "I don't understand is this really going to work at this price? It's so little." So you just have to understand what, for a lot of people, this is it's an incredible value of what's going on with Pro.
And again, the reason that we've priced it this way is because we want people to use it, right? We wanted to lower the barrier to entry, to have professional, high-quality production on Zoom. The Zoom platform is going to be the place where you're going to be able to produce these Tier 1 virtual events. And we wanted to make sure the tools are accessible to people, again, all the way from a free option, all the way up to a really powerhouse of contribution with many points of entry and license conversion options and free trials and all that kind of stuff. We've really offered a lot here because we want people to use it.
And will there be any watermarks on the beta?
No watermarks on the beta. So when you register for the beta, you land on a page where the download's available, and right above that are the license keys. So you get a license key for V2 Lite and a license key for V2 Pro, depending on whether you wanted to trial the Lite version to see if that was going to work for your use case when you eventually decide to make a purchase. At the end of the beta period, those 2 license keys are going to expire, and then you will purchase a license key, or you will convert your V1 key into a V2 Pro key. And then there's also a free trial mode. So the trial mode is completely unlocked version of Pro. Every 60 seconds, it cuts to a test card for 2 seconds that says, this is an unlicensed version of ISO, and it mutes all the audio. So there's we're not watermarking the outputs anymore. We're cutting to something, which again optimizes our performance. We're pretty gung-ho about making sure this thing performs really well.
Next question.
Stan Chan in San Francisco asked, are all the core platform-related features in ZoomISO available in the Zoom Rooms platform?
So no, I mean, it depends on how you define core platform. Our V2 media engine is exclusive to ZoomISO, so all that acceleration framework that's taking advantage of the latest and greatest on Apple Silicon is obviously exclusive to ZoomISO because it's exclusively supported on those Macs, right? Zoom Rooms is a cross-platform capability, but if you back up a little bit, right? So ZoomISO is ZoomISO and Zoom Rooms are sharing the Zoom infrastructure, right? And because we've added the ability to do 12 outputs via NDI from Zoom Rooms, that is a comparable feature between the two of them, and it has the embedded isolated audio option as well. But ZoomISO has some exclusive features like direct decklink support, siphon support, being a meeting client form factor, high bandwidth mode, and all this acceleration framework on Apple Silicon that's exclusive to ZoomISO.
Next question.
From Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana. Chris asked, how has the siphon process changed in this new beta?
So we continue to be really excited about the Siphon protocol, and in fact, in version 2, we've updated it to Metal Siphon, which is a more natively accelerated version of Siphon on Apple Silicon. And we understand that there's a lot of use cases where you want to use Siphon. Maybe you're connecting to Isadora and you're doing a creative performance at low latency with low overhead. It's a really attractive protocol, so we continue to support that. However, we no longer require that Siphon be used in order to be able to get to SDI, right? So conventionally in V1, what you would do in our video chain is you would export from Siphon, ingest into Black Siphon, export to Decklink. Now with ISO version 2 Pro, you have the ability to go right out to the Decklink. So there's no need to go to Siphon as an intermediary protocol anymore if you don't want to, but there are some still really good reasons to use Siphon, and now that we have Metal Siphon, it's even more performant on Apple Silicon.
So have you picked up some stability gains with that change, Andy?
I think so. I mean, anytime you reduce the number of links in a chain, right, you're kind of implicitly improving stability from that perspective. I think, you know, Black Siphon has served us well, and it was a strong option. I mean, all of Office Hours version 2.0 has been produced using the Siphon Black Siphon Decklink chain, and it's been good. But I think we can do a lot better with the direct Decklink outputs that we have. So I feel confident that this export chain is a lot more optimized than the one that we had in version 1.
Next question.
Jonas Dottel in Stuttgart, Germany. Any chance for an HTTP API?
Yeah, so we offer our OSC API, which is a leading API for in-meeting capability that I think really sets us apart. That, as you know, that API can be wrapped up into HTTP, and you can use external tools to translate between HTTP and OSC. That's something that Universe does. That's something that Troicatronics can do through Isadora. So there's a variety of ways to convert between HTTP and OSC. But there's a couple of things about HTTP that I don't like as much as OSC. HTTP is obviously a web-focused protocol, whereas OSC is a UDP-based native protocol. And so there's speed advantages, there's advantages for transmission latency that makes it more optimized for our use case. I think I'd rather have an active speaker notification coming over a native protocol that was faster than getting the notification later because of the web request being a higher latency, right? But we also understand that there's valid use cases for wanting to use HTTP, such as remote access. But again, there's brokering services that can manage that for you. So we feel that the market pressure to have an HTTP API is lessened as a result of having a multiple ways of getting to OSC. But we wanted to offer the most open, fastest native protocol that we could, understanding that you're going to be able to convert from other protocols into that protocol and reap the benefits of that connection. So at this time, there's not an immediate plan for introducing an HTTP API to ZoomISO or ZoomOSC.
Next question.
Dennis Champion Walker in Mansfield, UK. Can you talk about the changes in the ZoomISO engine?
Absolutely. So in ZoomISO version 1, the export chain was taking the video frame out of, so the video frame would travel into Zoom, then it would be decoded into the macOS display APIs via a screen render. You get that pop-up window. Then we would capture that window and then turn it back into raw data, and then we'd use that raw data to export to the other apps. In the V2 chain, it is much, much simplified. The raw data comes directly from Zoom, directly through our accelerated conversion and scaling APIs, and then right out to the export framework. There's no need to go through this like loop and capture YUV conversion recapturing system in the display APIs of macOS. So it's dramatically simplified, which means it has much better performance. It uses much less CPU utilization and actually has a higher throughput. The actual image quality in ISO version 2 is significantly improved compared to ISO version 1. Matter of fact, if you were watching today's IBC coverage, you were watching it on ISO version 2. We collaborated with the team to be able to have early access to V2. So you've already seen the difference. And I actually have done some A/B comparisons of like cutting office hours on version 1 and version 2, and the image quality and the smoothness and like the frame velocity is dramatically improved because of the simplified export chain.
Dennis Champion Walker in Mansfield, UK. Can you talk about the changes in the ZoomISO engine?
Absolutely. So in ZoomISO version 1, the export chain was taking the video frame out of, so the video frame would travel into Zoom, then it would be decoded into the macOS display APIs via a screen render. You get that pop-up window, and then we would use that raw data to export to the other apps. In the V2 chain, it is much, much simplified. The raw data comes directly from Zoom, directly through our accelerated conversion and scaling APIs, and then right out to the export framework. There's no need to go through this like loop and capture YUV conversion recapturing system in the display APIs of macOS. So it's dramatically simplified, which means it has much better
That was sneaky, Andy. Let's go to our next question.
Bill Davis from San Diego, and here on the panel, clearly your IBC participation shows you have an eye towards traditional broadcast hardware integration. Should we expect continued Zoomification of traditional media distribution?
Yeah, definitely. I'll take this one. I said this before, but I'll repeat it, that our presence at IBC is very indicative of the fact that we think that Zoom belongs in a broadcast room, right? We think that all of your hardware, both expensive and affordable, should integrate properly with Zoom. And so that's why we've been getting the outputs, getting the data, isolated audio, isolated video. But going towards the second part of that question as well, talking about the Zoomification of media, and I like that term. I think it's important to recognize what Zoom does well, right? We're at IBC. We're surrounded by streaming platforms and partners and different solutions left and right. But at the end of the day, nobody streams with the latency and the speed of Zoom, right? We can have conversations with 50, 100, 50,000 participants, depending on the size of the meeting or the webinar, and it comes in at low latency, it's reliable, it's scalable, and it just works, right? That's the motto of Zoom, it just works. And adding to that as well, it's something that audience interaction and participation kept to the simplest level possible with ZoomISO just as a participant or listener in that conversation, right? That really is what sets us apart from other solutions, point-to-point solutions that require more complicated setup. So Zoomification, yes, that's the answer. We're here to add to that experience.
You guys are watching a full court press on digital events by Zoom. This is the opening play.
Way cool.
Yeah, and I just want to say that it is, traditional media is going to have to catch up. This is the high water mark at this point. I mean, I've used almost every piece of hardware that gets a piece of video out into a broadcast. There's nothing that's near this right now, and they'll either have to adjust or compete with everybody online streaming to YouTube and Facebook and everything else who are doing it at a much higher quality than what broadcast has been doing up until now. So I think they don't really have a choice. They may not see that choice, but it's coming for them.
Well, did you just coin a phrase, perhaps?
Maybe. Let me see if I can go get the URL.
Did you already grab the domain on that one?
Exactly. No, I should have. Somebody get it for me. I said it first.
Let's go to our next question.
Next one in from Eduardo Augustine, Panama. How do you input ZoomISO each video into Blackmagic Design Extreme SDI?
Yeah, so again, this is one of the great parts about version 2 is that we have direct output to the DeckLink card in this case. And just walking through the chain of what that looks like. So from your Mac device running ZoomISO, you go through a Thunderbolt connection to an external Thunderbolt enclosure, which can contain a DeckLink card. Once you have that DeckLink card, you'll then go directly to your Blackmagic ATAM Extreme or whatever device you have, right? But that connection can be configured directly in ZoomISO in the interface. You can select from the drop-down menu which output you want to go to and which video format you need to support.
It's a very dramatic simplification. You're not converting NDI to SDI. You're not converting HDMI to SDI. You're not doing any of that anymore. You have the timing is actually, we were kind of joking with Blackmagic that the timing couldn't have been better for the SDI switchers, because we come out with a solution that can do 8 SDI outs and they come out with a switcher that can take SDI ins. So it was that was pretty cool timing.
Fantastic. Let's go to our next question.
Courtney Gooden from Hollywood, California, and here on the panel. Does the new ZoomISO rely more on GPU encode and decode, or QuickSync and Intel processors and M2 hardware encode on Apple, or is all the video processing still handled by CPU threads only?
And Courtney, did you want to qualify that?
Yeah, they've partially answered this by speaking about writing to the only making it available for the new Apple Silicon. But I'm wondering about the other 80% of the world, if they've ever, Intel has had QuickSync, which is hardware encode and decode built into their processors for at least the last 4 generations or 5 generations of chips. So H.264 encode and HEVC is now hardware encoding and decoding is built in onto those chips. Are you using any of that, or are you still using CPU? If on the Intel-based platforms, are you still just using CPU threads?
Yeah, so we had a choice in front of us when we were deciding how to build our V2 media engine. We could use OpenGL, which is a cross-product solution that is technically, I guess, deprecated by Apple at this point, but it's kind of the standard way of handling a GPU-accelerated video chain. We use Metal, which is the API that Apple is now encouraging developers to use for GPU-accelerated chains. But then we'd have to copy the frame from the CPU when it comes in from Zoom to the GPU, do our export chain conversion, scaling, all of that, which would be fast. We'd have to do the conversion, and then we'd have to convert back to the CPU for the protocols that don't natively support GPU acceleration. All right, so now we're looking at, okay, what's left on the table? Well, really, what we're looking at is vector image. So vImage is a accelerated conversion and scaling API that's available in macOS that specifically has dedicated hardware, to my understanding, in Apple Silicon that makes that really performant. So we looked at that and we said, wow, we are able to do an insane amount of performance by optimizing our architecture for this specific framework. And we felt that, because of the performance that we were seeing, and because of the guidance, frankly, from Apple, they're not making new Intel Macs at this point. We felt that it was the best choice to really follow the guidance, look at the architecture, and optimize for what was there. And Apple Silicon kind of blurs the line between the CPU and the GPU because of the shared memory pool, a lot of the shared architecture. So it is accelerated in the sense that we're using accelerated conversion APIs, but it's done in the vector image space and not inside of the Metal GPU space. That prevents us, again, from having to copy from the CPU back to the GPU. It allows us to work in an accelerated area, but Apple Silicon offers the opportunity to do that without having to copy out to the GPU.
Are there equivalent platforms or codecs used in the NVIDIA and in the Intel world that offer that same degree of optimization?
There may be in the world of Intel and AMD, but with NVIDIA, right, everything you have to copy out to the GPU first. And we wanted to avoid again, the video is coming in through your network port into Zoom. So it's arriving in the CPU world, right? It's not like generative media running inside of a shader, right? That's GPU native. It has to be copied to the GPU. And you pay a significant performance penalty, even with things like resizable bar, to get from the CPU to the GPU. And we just felt like that was too high of a price to pay when we're trying to build the most optimized export engine for remote teleconferencing around.
Very good. Next question.
From Guy Cochran in Seattle, what is high bandwidth mode?
Yeah, so high bandwidth mode is something that we talk a little bit about when it comes to ISO V2 Pro. It's one of the differentiating features, and it's the ability for us to have a higher bandwidth link from the Zoom cloud to the Zoom client. So the traditional Zoom client, right, has one screen or it runs in dual monitor mode. A Zoom Rooms client has like 3 screens, right? One of them gallery, one of them can be screen share or active speaker or spotlights or things like that, right? And that link to the Zoom cloud is 24 megabit per second. With ZoomISO, we have the ability to create theoretically an arbitrary number of video outputs from the app. So the question became, well, wait, we're going to run into the 24 meg limit before we run out of CPU cycles because of how optimized this engine is. We're like, whoa, wait a second. Like, we have 80% CPU left, and we've run out of bandwidth. So high bandwidth mode allows us to increase that cap to 75 to 100, and it's that requires a global infrastructure change, right? So the MMRs all over the world are being updated to be able to support this extra bandwidth. So we're really excited about that. And again, allow some time for that to happen. There might be a point update that we issue to V2 Pro in order to be able to accommodate that. There's going to be some infrastructure changes on the Zoom side that are going to be accommodating that. So, that's something that we're excited about. Give us check in with us again around mid-October and see how we did in terms of that rollout. But that is something that started now and is rolling out worldwide, but it's a global infrastructure upgrade. So it's going to take some time to get around the world.
Is it the reason you've gone for a mode for that instead of automatic, the reason that it's something you're testing out right now?
So it's not, the mode is more of a term, right? It's the differentiation is that ISO version 2 Lite is capped at 4 outputs, so it's not taking advantage of more bandwidth because it doesn't require it. And then the ZoomISO Pro has a unlimited number of outputs, and you can define up to 1,000 outputs inside of the app. Obviously, you're not going to be able to encode that, but the bottleneck becomes the bandwidth that's available. It's not like a setting that we enable for your account or something like that. It's not a mode, or it's not like this experimental setting that you enter into. It's a feature that we have access to that allows for a higher bandwidth link to the Zoom cloud.
Copy that. Let's go to our next question.
Jesse Mills in San Francisco Bay Area here in the panel. Does the work within the Zoom Event Services team inform the ZoomOSC ISO development?
Yes, definitely. In fact, that's my job, right? So I'm on the event services team, and it's my job to take all of the events that we're doing, all the projects we're doing, try to solve them with ZoomOSC and ZoomISO, and then immediately turn to Andy and complain about all the features and things that we need. So
we have a really good working relationship at Zoom now. This was the thing that I think made Liminal different as a company that we've been able to maintain at Zoom. Jonathan dealt with all the services, I dealt with the products, and we have a really close relationship, constantly going back and forth. Hey, Jonathan, think about these kind of things that you could be offering in services. Oh, hey, Andy, these are the features that we really need because we're trying to deploy these services. And now my team, Events Engineering, and Jonathan's team, Event Services, have that same relationship where we're hearing about, my team is getting data about events that are taking place every day all over the world and getting really good feature requests that we integrate into the product. And then we're going back to them and saying, hey, we have this opportunity. How do you want it to work? So we have this really symbiotic relationship where our teams are helping each other out. My team is building apps for them to build better events. They are giving us critical feature requests and deployments that improve the products for everybody. So it's a really, really cool relationship.
Yeah, definitely.
That's beautiful, guys. That hug is probably going to be the thumbnail for our broadcast. Congratulations. Next question.
Stan Chan in San Francisco. Is there an end of life for version 1?
Eventually, there will be an end of life. We're not sharing that date at this time, but we want everybody to migrate to version 2 when you feel comfortable doing so. We understand that we want to get that out of beta first. Eventually, there will be an end of life for version 1, but it's not something that we've set just yet.
Next question.
Chris Widener, Lafayette, Indiana. Any new ZoomISO commands we should be aware of for participant control?
Yeah, so out of the gate, you have 2 OSC commands that I think are going to be pretty handy for you. You have the output ISO command, which is something that we had in version 1, which allows you to say, I want to put this person on this output via OSC. And so that still exists today. And then we introduced the audio ISO command, so / audio ISO, which allows you to do the same thing and say, I want this person on this channel of a multi-channel audio device. So it's the equivalent of output ISO for audio. So that command now exists as well. Allows you to manage it from Stream Deck, allows you to manage it from Universe, all sorts of really cool options for integrating remote control of that through the audio ISO command.
Next question.
Jonas Dottel from Stuttgart. Any news on Streamweaver?
I am really proud to announce that IZZY Cast is going to be the successor to Streamweaver. That was something that we felt really, really strongly about. Streamweaver was our first commercial app. It actually predates the pro version of ZoomOSC. It's something that we really believed in. The ability to control a show remotely, the ability to produce works of theater that allow us to remotely control the lighting and the cameras. And Mark's demo that he's showing here at IBC is remote camera control, remote lighting control, remote motion capture data, all the things that I had on my old YouTube channel of showing how to do all this stuff. Mark has figured out how to do it inside of our video SDK. It's a more than worthy successor to Streamweaver, and we're so happy that we've taken the ideas that powered that product, taken the incredible power of the Zoom Video SDK and brought it to a great product like Isadora to be able to bring to market. IZZY Cast is more than a worthy successor to what Streamweaver could offer.
Congratulations, guys. Did we just break that?
Did you pointed a camera at the thing? Oh, yeah.
Nice. Next question.
Ronnie Hofsey from Tromsø, Norway. Out to HDMI or SDI? What is the hardware needed to getting video and audio out to Vision and audio mixers?
Do you want to take this one, Jonathan?
Yeah, I can give you a few recommendations here. Again, we do encourage you to try your own hardware solutions and see what works best for you. But for SDI, Blackmagic cards are supported at the moment. Now, getting a Blackmagic PCI card into cramming that into a Mac Mini is not quite possible, so you do need an external enclosure for that. A few recommendations. We highly recommend the enclosures from Sonatec. Sonnet makes an Echo SE2 enclosure, which can connect to a simple Thunderbolt cable. They also make an X-Rack Mac Mini, I believe it's called, which is a 1U unit that has the mount for the Mac Mini and the enclosure for the Thunderbolt card built in that. And then for HDMI, you can come directly out of the HDMI coming out of the Mac Mini, or you can use a USB-C to dual link, display link adapter.
Display link specifically is what we'd recommend on Apple Silicon. Yeah.
Correct. And that allows you to get multiple videos, extra HDMI outputs, in addition to the one on the back of the Mac Mini. And again, I'm talking a lot about the Mac Mini just because we see such incredible performance out of that specific unit. So it really is our top recommendation at the moment.
And I'm assuming that's M1 Mac Mini.
Absolutely.
Peter, do you want to jump in?
Well, I wanted to point out that Sonitech just announced versions of those same enclosures, except they're taller, and will support the Studio. I think it's a 4U slice now, and 3 PCIe cards in its expansion chassis. So I'm thinking it can start to replace my my Big Mac Pro that I have sitting next to me.
Oh, the cheese grater, yeah.
I have a 2019 cheese grater.
There you go.
Fantastic. Let's go to our next question.
From Mickey Macachor in the Philippines, are there plans for Kona card support?
So right now, the ZoomISO version 2 is, in terms of our SDI output capabilities, exclusively available for Blackmagic desktop video. I think that's a great place for us to start. And I hope we can share more information on other export options in the future as the industry continues to develop. But I think it's a really strong launch to start with Blackmagic on this.
Let's go to our next question.
Peter Sargent from Round Rock, Texas, and here on the panel. What is your preferred method for us office hours users of ZoomISO version 2 beta to communicate unexpected behaviors and or bugs?
So we absolutely welcome the feedback and really appreciate it. That's part of why we love Office Hours so much, is that we have this direct link to you. We have a form available on the downloads page that allows you to say, this is the model computer I have, this is the operating system I'm running, this is the behavior I want, this is the behavior I'm seeing. And you can also upload, if you have like bugs or crash reports or things like that, you can give it to us. That automatically creates a ticket in our system. We can process that feedback and use that to inform decisions about how we proceed with the app.
Next question.
Morgan Price in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. How could you set up a ZoomISO so a 3-person panel could be on a super source and be able to hear questions from the other participants in the same Zoom meeting? He's trying to set up a smaller but fancier meeting.
Yeah, let's see if I can break this down and understand a bit more. So, and how I would accomplish this, right? So, if I understand the objective here is to try to, pull out the ISO videos from 3 panelists, arrange them better how you want in your super source, but yet still have them able to take questions and interact with the other participants. In this context, the actual execution is very simple, right? Because the participants, the panelists, are actually in the meeting and they're able to interact just as normal like they would a Zoom meeting. From their perspective, they're seeing a regular Zoom meeting. Once you pull the feeds out, that's when you can do the arrangements and the customization based on that. And another addendum to that is that because we have the isolated audio, you could pull just the audio of the 3 panelists and not the other participants in the meeting. So that way for your program output, you don't receive the questions if that's not what you want. You only receive just the 3 audio from the participants, right?
Yeah, and I think this is one of the things that's so cool about the way we built ZoomISO. You're not required to pull everybody into your production hardware, build a mix minus, and pass it back to them for double-ended latency. ZoomISO is simply an observer. It's another client sitting in the meeting, and it has the ability just to export everything that it sees around it, right? So, and I think that's a really revolutionary way of thinking about remote contribution. As far as the panel is concerned, they're sitting inside of a Zoom meeting, having a low-latency Zoom call with everybody else that's going on there, and you just have the ability to sit, observe that call, and ISO out the stuff you want, and not worry about the stuff you don't. So you don't have to worry about building complex mix minuses systems and all that stuff, complex behavior on top of Zoom in order to be able to build the show you want. It's all just sort of natively supported right inside of ZoomISO and the way that Zoom's architected.
Thanks. Next question.
Hasmukh Gajar from Cape Town, South Africa. Support for Zoom's ZoomISO BitFocus Companion module is a beta version of Companion for both version 1 and version 2 ZoomISO.
Yeah, so the support for the beta version of Companion is limited to version 2. It's also for ZoomOSC 4.1. As a matter of fact, Jeffrey, can we get Jeffrey? I want you guys to see Jeffrey Davids here. He's the guy who's been working with us to develop the BitFocus Companion module. I just want to give him a round of applause because I think he's just done an absolutely amazing job with the module. It's such a pleasure to work with you on this, and I really appreciate it. He's put in a ton of work to get this thing going, and I just want him to be recognized for his development effort on this. It's really been incredible.
Thank you.
Of course. Thanks, Jeffrey. Yeah. Also, if you have bug reports, go to him.
There we go. The other shoe is dropped. Next question.
Hasmukh has another question for you. For the average small producer, is ZoomISO version 2 Lite sufficient? Pro appears to be a scaled production.
Yes, exactly. So there are three main differences between Lite and Pro. So the first difference is the number of outputs. With Lite, you're limited to 4 outputs, which in many cases is sufficient, right? If you have just 4 panelists in your show, that's all you need. Keep in mind that that's just 4 outputs. You can have as many participants in the meeting that you want, and you can dynamically switch who is assigned to those outputs on the fly, right? Using OSC or using the interface. So that's number one. Number two is you have the decklink outputs in Pro versus in Lite. So if you need decklink, if that's important for you, go ahead and get the Pro license instead of Lite. And then the third thing is the audio outputs, right? So embedded audio is something, it's a feature with Lite, but if you need the advanced audio outputs, which allows you to go to a separate audio multi-channel device, that is only available in Pro.
I think we should clarify, why is there a Lite version, right?
Yes.
The Lite version is here because we recognize that a majority of our customers are using NDI with embedded audio with vMix, and they're producing panels of 4 people or fewer. So we gave you a less expensive entry point into the platform if you only need those features, which is, from our understanding of how people were using V1, that is a ton of people. So we gave you a cheaper entry point into the ZoomISO platform where you're taking advantage of all the new media engine stuff, but you only need to produce a 4-person show, you're using NDI, you want embedded audio, you have a simple setup, that's where V2 Lite is for. If you're paying $1,000 for a deck link, that's when you're going to start talking about, the pro features of ZoomISO.
And I'd probably interject too, Andy, that if we want to test out the features, we can do it on a lighter budget as opposed to grabbing the full.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, during the beta period, we have V2 Lite and V2 Pro licenses available. So if you're like, oh, I want to determine if Lite's going to meet my needs, go grab the Lite key, put it in the app, see what features you have and what you don't in the way that interacts with your workflow, and then you can make an informed purchasing decision.
Fantastic. Let's go to our next question.
From Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas, how does ZoomISO reach out to the less technical user to the point where they can understand some basics and use it?
Yeah, I think both Jonathan and I have some thoughts on this one. So when we did the original ZoomISO launch, we launched like 12 videos about how to connect it to basically every other app we could get our hands on and how to connect it to Zoom, right? Obviously, we're in open beta right now, so we still have some time to produce that content to try to educate our customer base about ease of use. And we think that presets are a really important part of that. We now have the ability in ZoomISO to save a preset of the entire app configuration, export it to a file, share it, and open it. So our support team can be like, hey, here's a configuration where you have a 360p video feed of everybody in the in a gallery view, for example, or here's an example where we have ISO audio tied to all your video outputs, right? So we think presets are really important. We think the companion is a really important entry point to the platform, again, using our presets. But I also think, more philosophically, this is an important part of our relationship with office hours. We rely on you guys a lot, to be able to produce high-end virtual events with our technology. That's why we spend the time sitting down with you guys and explaining all the details, so you can go out to the customer base and your clients and produce high-quality events based on the knowledge that you're getting kind of from us about how the apps work and what the information is. So I view this community as an important leader in educating the market about the capabilities of the Zoom platform, because we can only go so far, and there's something very authentic about it coming from you guys, from your real work experience, and being critical of us when necessary, and also being, ready to engage in the latest capabilities that we have, pushes us forward and pushes the industry forward. So I view office hours as a really important component of that strategy to accelerate virtual event adoption.
Definitely, and building off of that, specifically talking about ease of use, the new user interface in ZoomISO 2 makes it dramatically simpler to understand what's going on. You don't have additional pop-up windows that you have to manipulate and work with, and the user interface has been redone to be able to have more clear categories and settings, and the positioning of elements makes more sense as well. So from a beginner standpoint, we believe ZoomISO version 2 is a lot easier to use. And then I would recommend, just on that, if you're looking to just get started with it, try it out and try using the NDI outputs. They're very simple to use. You assign the output type to NDI, and you can pull it in most modern software-based video switchers. So give that a try, and you'll find that it's a lot easier than you would expect.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Alex, did you want to weigh in?
You can expect office hours to be heavily focused on this over the next couple months as we get people through. I would highly recommend people download the beta. We're going to be doing stuff every single week, sometimes every single day, to get both our system up and to build the most number of people that fully understand this as fast as we possibly can before it's released. That's our goal, is to, I'm looking to try to educate 100 people minimum before the release, where they can actually operate these, and then build from there.
Fantastic. Our test kitchen is ready to go. Let's go to our next question.
Harshit Trivedi from Daytona Beach, Florida, and right here on our panel. To the Zoom team, what kind of information can I take back to my community of accessibility needs? Vision, hearing, ASL, etc.
You know, Zoom has dedicated communications teams around accessibility and access, opportunity for the Zoom platform. So I think there's a lot of information there that you can reach out to. We're kind of, specialists when it comes to like event and broadcast use cases of the platform. But one thing I will say when it comes to accessibility is that the openness of our protocol allows you to tie it to all sorts of external controllers. Like the OSC protocol can tie to, a lot of different devices that can be used in an accessibility use case versus a production use case. And I'll also say that improving the clarity and comprehension capability of communications inside of a well-produced event is an important part of accessibility, right? Being able to clearly communicate a message in a way that's, I think it democratizes understanding in a way that dovetails nicely with accessibility goals.
And adding to that as well, Andy mentioned the idea that data from ZoomOSC can be used to increase those accessible goals and access. One thing that we have been doing is taking the chat messages from Zoom, pulling that out in data, and being able to render that in a different capacity or in different sizing, right? And this means that you have full control over how that's displayed and who it's displayed to. So if you want to have, for example, captioning on the side of an in-person event from the Zoom chat, and you want to make sure that the font is big enough and readable and has the right legibility, right? That's something you can accomplish using the data output from ZoomOSC.
And our final question.
From Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Andy, can you describe your journey from a solo company to the Zoom relationship, and what is ISO?
So I'll start with the last one. ISO is short for isolated. It's a sort of an industry term for describing like demuxed content, right? So like this is separated from that. That's the idea of why it's called ISO. In terms of what the journey has been like for Jonathan and I, coming from our partnership to Zoom, I think that I'll start for my part at least. It's been extremely exciting. I feel like, part of the reason that we joined the Zoom team was because we felt like we could really make a difference here. And Zoom has totally empowered us to be able to do what we're doing. There's so many people to thank, right? And we've also been able to work with a lot of the same team that we had, and new members have come along as well. So I really love going to work every day. It's more than a job for me. I feel like it's an opportunity to make a difference both to our industry and I think to the world and how we communicate. So I feel like Zoom has really empowered me to have that capability. And they've also given me the leeway. I still feel like, we have the opportunity to create everything that you're seeing in this booth, right? And Zoom has sort of said, go for it, achieve your vision for what you think, this industry needs. And I feel really empowered by Zoom to be able to do what I want to do in this space. And so I'm very, very happy about that. I still feel like I have all the autonomy, but now I have the backing of, a multi-billion-dollar company behind us that helps us make this stuff happen. I'm curious what you think, Jonathan, too.
Yeah, no, I know. I definitely echo the same sentiment. Zoom really has given us the support and the backing. And you can see even from an earlier question as well, the way that Andy and I have fulfilled our jobs within Zoom mimics what we used to do under Liminal, right? We are making sure that we help Zoom both from a services side and from a product development side, and make sure that the advice we give, the projects we work on, the things that we encourage Zoom to keep funding and keep working on, they tie back to the needs that we directly receive from you guys in the community and the partners we talk to, right? So I'm happy that we're able to maintain our relationship from the solo company moving up to Zoom and make sure that collaboration is just as strong as before.
We're thrilled, guys, that you've been empowered to move virtual events forward. Andy, Jonathan, congratulations on your announcement of ZoomISO release. We're very excited in this community. Look forward to working with you to test out and bring in new features. Also, congratulations to our IBC team. Fantastic coverage. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch it on our YouTube broadcast. Tomorrow, we have a special day of introspection. We're reflecting on our 900 days, which actually fell on today, but we've got some time to set aside tomorrow and talk about it. So bring your nostalgia tomorrow. We'll talk about 900 days of office hours, daily show. And thank you to the panel, our producers, all of those on the production end. You will see them in the credits as we roll them. So let's move into after hours, after our show.
Better start lighting those candles now. Got 900 to go.
I got the flamethrower. It's coming on Amazon. It should arrive later today. It's got
Zoom.
By but it's on Amazon, so it only can reach like 10 feet.
Oh, I didn't hear us. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, guys.
Cut off the end.
You guys rock.
Andy, Jonathan, you're in Amsterdam. Go find beer.
Whiskey. Whiskey bar. L&B. L&B is the one. That's the best one in Amsterdam. 2,000 whiskeys. You can take whiskey flights and then